Hi there, this is Steve Spurrier. You can join University of Florida Hall of Famer Shane Matthews and also the two-time SEC Player of the Year every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, opinions, and some of the biggest names in sports. You can find him on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or you can watch him live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter.
Hey guys, Shane here. Just letting y'all know that Grizzly and I, Grizzly, look at the camera. We're going to take this week off. We're getting ready for the grind of football season. As Coach Napier says, submarine season. Seth Harp will host. He'll have all great guests. Y'all make sure y'all tune in, and we'll see you next week. Let's get ready for football season, folks. Go Gators.
Well, happy Friday to you. Seth Harp on Sports, wrapping up the week. I've been your backup quarterback for the better part of the last 5 days. Enjoyed it immensely. The guy sitting shotgun with me for a good chunk of this journey, JC, with us here on this Friday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Reminder, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Also, myself and Mr. JC joining you live from the Titan MRI Vision Line Hotline. I gotta go see those guys down there. I stepped in a storm drain on campus about 6 weeks ago. I've been wearing this ankle brace. Still hurts.
Oh, man.
Still hurts. I think I should just go down to Titan MRI and get that taken care of. But
yeah.
I'm being a little too stubborn right now. Speaking of stubborn, JC, Colorado seems to be like those girls I used to date in college. 12 years to make up their mind, want to go this way. Now they want to go this way. And after 13 years, Colorado leaving the Pac-12 to head back to the Big 12. We have that story. Brett McMurphy tweeting late last night that right now it's just Colorado for now.
Well,
but
for now.
In the next few months here, 3 more teams the Big 12 would like to add. Without mentioning names, they want Pac-12 teams. All 3 of these teams, they want to be Pac-12 teams. They want to raid this conference. If they don't get those Pac-12 teams, then they will explore Mountain West teams, including San Diego State, SMU, and even UNLV.
Well,
the difference is pretty big, right, JC, from Arizona State to UNLV and Fresno State and the likes of those schools.
Well, here's what blows my mind a little bit about this whole story is that I think one of the most crazy aspects of this is something that Stuart Mandel tweeted. And what he tweeted was the Big 12's TV partner now is basically locked in to pay the worst team, the worst program in that conference, at the same time that they can't even lock in $1 for the best programs. You know, I mean, it's crazy. They just got Colorado, was the worst program in the football of that conference, and they're paying full price for that. But they haven't even, the Pac-12 hasn't even got a TV deal yet, and they were caught sleeping at the wheel again with this Colorado thing, which is another story of how this conference under Brent Yormark is outmaneuvering the Pac-12 by basically negotiating a clause with ESPN for pro rata payment if they add schools, which typically would mean you would have more money. So I think it's a good story for Colorado. I tell you, the next team that just seems so natural to me to join the Big 12, to me, with BYU there is Utah. I mean that's a big rivalry in all aspects: basketball, football, hell, polo, whatever it is. Utah and BYU just have contempt for each other on the athletic surface. Very different schools, but big rivalry. Salt Lake City and Provo. I don't know. To me, it would add to the rivalry aspect of the Big 12 if Utah joins, because Utah's a good program, man. They're the Pac-12 champions. Seems like they've been that more than the other teams the last few years, if you know what I'm saying. So I will see where that goes, but it is very interesting to me, Seth. I think it's interesting. I'm curious to see how other conferences and other schools will respond to this.
Yeah. So ask and you shall receive, JC, because
okay,
maybe the ACC. This coming out from Mr. Phillips, Commissioner, that the ACC has been and remains highly engaged at looking at anything that makes the conference better. We continue to spend considerable time on expansion to see if there's anything that fits. We have a tremendous group of institutions, but if there's something that makes us better, we're open to it. According to people inside of, ACC Media Days,
yeah,
Big 12 looking at potential targets, including Oregon, Washington, West Virginia, and SMU. So, to me, any of those targets, with the Big Ten adding USC and UCLA, if the ACC goes with Oregon and Washington, I mean, you're talking about
it just doesn't make.
You could spin me on West Virginia geographically, but it's money. But here's the thing. I got news for you, gang. Washington and Oregon, they ain't USC and UCLA either in terms of the power and the money that you're going to be able to generate with a TV contract because of the market of Los Angeles. I get Oregon and Washington into the Big Ten because you compare them with the other two former Pac-12 teams with USC and UCLA. I get the Big 12 targeting those. The ACC, it's a totally different board because you're going completely ocean to ocean. West Virginia, SMU, I think the ACC will do something. I just don't know where they go.
I don't either. I mean, they're stuck. They're so stuck with their grant of rights, the media deal that they signed years ago that locks up these schools till 2036. I don't know how you get out of that unless every school president in that conference got together and said, we're out. And I don't even know if that can be done contractually or legally. I have no idea what their plan could be, but adding two schools on the opposite side of the country is just logistically nightmarish. And by the way, I don't really know what Pittsburgh and Syracuse have added to that conference. I'm sure there's something that I'm missing, but that conference just seems so. It's just, to me, it's good during basketball season with the schools in North Carolina and Virginia and so forth, and then football season with you have two schools, Miami, which has never won the ACC since joining, and Florida State and so forth. I don't know. That conference to me is they don't like the position they're in, these schools, I don't think. I know Florida State does not like being in the ACC. I mean, that's just a thought. I mean, they could have joined, I guess. I don't know. The SEC may have asked them a long time. Do you even remember how that happened when they went to the ACC?
It's been a long time. It's been a couple decades. They just don't fit anymore. They don't.
They didn't want to come.
The SEC doesn't need them.
No. I agree. You're right. It does not.
Florida State's one of those people that walks into a room and they're like, I'm single, I'm open for bidding. And everyone's like, nobody wants you. Nobody wants you. Well, why would we want you? It's like, tradition. I mean, 20 years ago? I don't want to.
Yeah, nah. No, their time had passed. They had a chance, I think, in the 90s. And Bobby Bowden, somebody just didn't want any part of it. So,
the Big Ten, the Big Ten was hoping. The Big Ten, I got some buddies there, were hoping that Nebraska would see their error of their ways like Colorado, and Nebraska would want to go back to the
Big 12.
The Big 12, so the Big Ten could then start looking at adding, Oregon or Washington. But Nebraska's not leaving. And here's where you are, JC. Why, if you're Nebraska, would you have a TV contract that pays you $50 million a year for one that pays you $30? You're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that. It's not.
There's no way. They did well to go to the Big Ten. They did very well, but it does seem like an odd fit, doesn't it? Nebraska and the Big Ten. It's been this way now for many years, but there's been nothing that they've added on the field in either sport that makes you say Big Ten, Nebraska. It's just they've got to get better.
They thought they were going to dominate that conference because Ndamukong Suh almost sacked Colt McCoy. So right, they were going to dominate this conference. It hadn't quite worked out that way. Again, PodUp with Matthews in the morning with you here on this Friday. JC, Seth Harp. with you. Brought to you in part by Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and the surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com. Friday, it's Peachland Dentistry, JC and the QB weekend picks. Do you have picks already?
I mean, we were gonna. I neglected to tell you that typically Shane and I pick golf on Wednesday because the tournament starts on Thursday.
Gotcha.
But golf never even came up on Wednesday. Plus, it's in Minnesota this weekend and so they had some weather delay yesterday. I tell you, the country is in havoc in July, especially if you're traveling. Last night going through Atlanta, dude, they stuck a flight going to Gulfport, Mississippi, my flight, next to a flight going to Montreal, Canada, big city. And you should have seen all the Europeans crammed into Terminal D with all us hillbillies going to Gulfport. It was great. And they didn't understand it. They said, why is this terminal so small and so miserable? I said, this is traveling in July going through Atlanta. That's why. Delta's a great airline, but my God, the operation they have right now in Atlanta during the travel season is chaos. Try to avoid it if you can. That's my advice. Seth, I wanted to bring this up real quickly, and I didn't know when the right time to do it would be or not. But, we talked about running backs in the NFL, and we talked about how teams have basically said, this is what they're going to earn. This is what you're going to get. This is your pay scale, and that's the way it is. Tough luck if you don't like it. And my thinking has kind of changed somewhat because to me, when I look at Barkley, who did sign, and Josh Jacobs, who hasn't signed yet, all running backs are not the same. They aren't. Now, you shake a tree and running backs come out, and I get it. But Saquon Barkley accounted for 40% of the Giants' plays last year, and he only costs 4.7% of their salary cap. That seems odd. And when you're playing in the NFL against the team, the object of the game to me is to create mismatches. And how do you do that? Well, you do that with superior talent. You do that with formation, variability in formations and so forth. And you do that with speed. And whenever you're playing the Giants, what is the defense primarily looking for? They're looking for 26. When you play the Saints, they're looking for Kamara. When you play a team like that, that seems to be somewhat one-dimensional in terms of play distribution, that team has value, and this guy Barkley costs them nothing. And so I understand the frustration now that some of these running backs, especially those two, have expressed, and certainly Barkley signing for a little bit more than what the franchise tag tender was is okay for 1 year. It was just too much money to pass up, even though on a scale of what these defensive linemen are getting, it's nothing. And yet, without Barkley, it doesn't matter what the defensive linemen do. The Giants aren't winning. And when you've got a guy that accounted for 40% of their plays and you're only paying him 4% of the total payroll, I think that sounds – I know life's not fair, but it has to be a little bit more fair than that for a guy like that. Now, I get it. Running back is a difficult position. But without him, I don't see – everybody knows the Giants aren't going anywhere if that guy's not in the backfield. They're not.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing about this is it's kind of like when you're heading into a lockout season or a potential strike season. The players all say the same thing, right? What do they say? It's like, we're going to teach the NFL a lesson this year. We're going to teach you a lesson. We're going to get our cut. We're going to get our cut. And then what happens? You start missing paychecks because the preseason games are. And it's one thing for me to sit here and, my job's terrible. I hate my job. I'm going to quit. It's another thing for me to look at my bank account and go, all right, then how am I paying the mortgage? How am I paying the car payment? How am I paying for the kids? How am I paying? Right. And that Saquon Barkley looks around. It's easy to hold out in the off season. Once the season starts, it becomes a little bit different. The only way that this works is if these running backs decide we're not playing.
Yeah. Well, I heard that too. But when you get down to it, my man, you're looking at an average of $750,000 to play a football game, 26 plays on Sunday afternoon. Yep. And $750,000 is what you're giving up at that salary per week. You have to play. You have to play. or something to that effect. Maybe those numbers are a little skewed, but $11 million is still $11 freaking million. And even though you're giving up about 40% of it playing in places like New York and New Jersey, so forth, you also get to once in a while play in a place like Dallas, Texas, where they don't have a 10% state income tax that you have to, because they pay them each week by where they're played. So a guy who's playing in Buffalo consistently on the same salary is making less than a guy playing for the Dolphins each week with the same salary, because he's paying all that state and local BS that they require you to pay up there in the northern states. Whereas down here in wonderful Florida, Miami Dolphin players don't pay that. Tampa Bay Buck players, Jaguar players, they don't pay that. But in New York, in New England, in Chicago, good God, it's very expensive. You got to negotiate those taxes out. And that is a real issue for a lot of guys. And maybe it's under talked about, or it's not, but it damn sure is. It makes a difference.
Of course. And JC, when I win the Mega Millions tonight, I'm going $15 million more than the guy in California is going to make because of state income tax. PodUp with Matthews in the morning, a service of Meldon Law. Facebook Live questions, fire away via the Meldon Law Facebook page or the Facebook Live questions. The official law firm injury partner of the Florida Gators, of course, JC and myself today, courtesy of the Titan MRI hotline. Zac Blobner, WDAE in Tampa, going to join us. He covers the Bucks and the Rays and the Lightning, and I'm going to get his thoughts. The trading deadline, what are the Rays going to do? And also, training camp is now open. Going to look at the Kyle Trask v. Baker Mayfield competition. Is one of the only competitions that is completely open heading in, at least, the first round draft picks at quarterback are eventually going to get their crack. Who knows what this is going to look like when it's all said and done. Jim Irsay was also mad, the owner of the Colts, talking about, he said his comments about running backs getting together and colluding and speaking with each other is unprofessional. It's not needed. And then, of course, everybody points that one of the running backs is his running back, Jonathan Taylor. He's like, "Well, I didn't see him." It's
like, that's tone deaf as hell. But whatever. I mean, the Colts, I got to give Aaron Rodgers credit here too. He's taken a lot less money so his team can have some flexibility to keep the current talent around and acquire more good players over the next 2 years. The Jets, could that be Dalvin Cook? I mean, somebody like that to the Jets. They're trying to figure out how to stay up there with Buffalo and Miami now, the resurgence of Dolphins, and I guess New England's always New England, but the Jets are really serious about trying to get – this is the team that hasn't been to the playoffs longer than anybody else, I'm thinking is right, since the last time they were in the playoffs. I don't know if anybody has been longer than the Jets. So Rodgers is doing his part. I think it's good. And I think that division, both divisions in the AFC and NFC, dude, are going to be in the East, are going to be really competitive. New York, Philadelphia, Dallas, those are three very good teams. I wouldn't be surprised if three of them made the postseason. And then Washington's no slouch defensively for sure. And then you've got in the AFC Buffalo, Miami, and now these Jets. So it could be good. I'm looking forward to that. But I'm really looking forward to when I can get some magazines. I want to read my magazines, start getting into this college. We're almost in August, Seth. I mean, it's about time.
Well, and I, looking at the schedule this year, my alma mater, Western Michigan University, plays an SEC, Mississippi State. For everybody's sake in the SEC and every SEC fan, better hope, because if my school is going to catch a team, that's the team you can catch. New coach, new situation. Who knows? Probably not. But, did beat Kenny Pickett and Pitt a couple years ago.
I remember that.
So I hope for everybody's sake on this show, everybody that listens, everybody that I know, that Western Michigan doesn't win, because I'm going to be able to ipso facto that game into Western Michigan being the third best team in the SEC, because Mississippi State, who beat Ole Miss, who beat Arkansas. I'll be that guy, JC.
They beat Pitt the year Pitt won the ACC. Kenny Pickett's senior year, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy, wasn't it? Yeah.
I thought about going. You need to hook me up with your airline buddies there so they can fly me, get me in and out, wheels up style. Right. No. That was just quite. It was just so funny talking to these poor people that flew over from France trying to get to Montreal.
Oh, their bathrooms. I said, nah, you got to go all the way. It was so funny. Everybody's lined up against the wall. It looked awful. It was miserable. I can't believe they stuck everybody in Terminal D. That's the worst terminal in Atlanta. For all you folks who travel, it's T, A, B, C, D, E, and F. D is the smallest of all of them. And they put all these international flyers right next to the good old folks going to Gulfport. And we just went right through their lines and got right on that Boeing 717, and we were up and down in 59 minutes. It was beautiful.
I once spent the night in the Philadelphia airport, and I felt like I was in Stalingrad.
Yeah.
Caught up with Matthews in the morning, a service of Silverback Concrete. Silverback Concrete, family-led team of heavy concrete specialists to build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, we stand by it. I want to ask you another NFL question because we're talking about running backs underpaid.
Yeah.
You know, conference realignment, all this movement. Joe Burrow hurt his calf yesterday.
I saw that.
Carted him off the field. Justin Herbert just got a 5-year, $260 million deal that we talked about. If you're Burrow and Joe Burrow's agent, you coming back out there without a major deal? You could do one right now for him if you wanted to.
I don't know when. I mean, we've heard about what the Bengals are going to do. I don't know what the timetable is on that, but the speculation is he's going to be the highest paid. But Hurts's deal, Lamar Jackson's deal, Deshaun Watson's deal, and now Justin Herbert's deal has really warped the payroll of these teams toward the quarterback position to an extent that I was stunned. But when Deshaun Watson, who hadn't played for 3 years, Jimmy hasn't signed him for that kind of money that they signed him for to make him the highest paid. Just I couldn't understand. So okay, this is an investment in the future with a guy that hasn't played in 2 years. And Jalen Hurts has one good season, granted, but look at that max deal he got because of one good season and so close to winning the Super Bowl. Justin Herbert hasn't been close to winning anything in the postseason, and neither has Lamar Jackson. So you have to think Joe Burrow has got to be there in terms of what is the highest paid player. Is it Deshaun Watson kind of money? Is it better? And the answer would be yes. So, I'm with you. I think that, to your question, if I'm saying, guy, hey, look, dude, Joe, they know they can't play without me. You know that they know that they can't play without me, and you know that they can't play without me. You better just chill, get this thing written down, get it on paper, because he's had an injury before that's taken him out of a large percentage of the season with the leg. So
there's no doubt this franchise is the armpit of the NFL for a decade.
Yes.
You're not getting another one of these guys.
Right.
Look, JC, I can't believe I'm saying this. Is he the greatest quarterback in Bengals history already?
Oh, has to be. Two AFC championships in back-to-back years. That's absurd. I mean, they didn't. Carson Palmer didn't win a playoff game with them.
You'd have to compare to Boomer Esiason, but I think
Marvin Lewis had never won a playoff game. I don't think he won one. And as the coach, that's Carson Palmer. That's whoever. And yes, Ken Anderson was in the 70s. Yes, of course he's the greatest quarterback they've had. Yeah. And they can't mess this up. And I don't think they will. I think they'll get smart real fast here, because when you watch that guy get carted off the field, you're nauseous if you're a Bengals fan, because everything rides on him. Everything they have rides on him. All of their investments in other players, their pathway through the AFC North Division, which is not easy, with Baltimore, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. Hell yeah, you better get him taken care of now. And I think it's going to happen here any day, week.
And your boy Jalen Ramsey, torn meniscus out.
Yeah,
poor Dolphins. The Dolphins just, we're all loaded up, and it's like they can't even get hours into training camp, and they're six.
So does Tua get his next concussion over under 6.5 weeks? I mean, we know it's coming. It just seems so consistent with the way it's gone for that organization on the health front, and I don't know why that is. I don't know what little harpoon out there is sticking these guys consistently year after year with the injury bug, but it just seems to be there, and there's just nothing they can do about it. It feels like
crazy stuff when you get right down to it, at least structure wise. And
how many weeks is Ramsey going to be
gone? Minimum 6 to 8. So Could be back.
Now's the time to get hurt. If you're going to get hurt, now's the time, I guess. But he won't be in football playing shape when he gets back. He just won't. Yeah, it's going to take a while.
That injury, just because of the blood flow and where it needs to get, that you can't do anything on it until you're ready to go. So,
that's tough. That's going to take him more than 6 weeks.
Week 2, week 3, probably when it's all said and done. I know that we're almost there. I wanted to ask you because it's the gift that keeps on giving. I think he's the most exciting player in baseball. I'm trying to think.
Right.
I can't even.
Seth, we talked about this the other day. We said that why were the Angels selling? Remember we were saying, okay, we are guessing where's this guy going to go? Where's Ohtani going to go? And then I said, or you said, one of us said, how do we know he's even going to leave? He might not go to anywhere. And now the Angels basically took him off the market. Since then, they have just trashed the Detroit Tigers. I mean, just absolutely trashed them. The Angels are a team that at the current trajectory, when Trout's going to get back soon, the Angels are going to make the playoffs. They're dangerous as hell with those guys playing. If they get some pitching, I'm impressed with the Angels because they want to win now. They don't want to sell. And so give them credit. But you and I talked about this on Wednesday. Why did we assume that he was going anywhere? You know, L.A., Los Angeles, my God. It makes sense, doesn't it? Orange County.
JC, on pace to go 15-7 on the mound with 250 strikeouts.
Yeah. That's just the pitching aspect of it.
58 home runs and 140 RBI. It's right. Ohtani is a video game.
Yeah, you're not going to let him go just like that at the trade deadline, and you may not let him go at all. So I was thinking that was the right move. The Angels they're going to buy. They've got a couple guys from the White Sox. The Angels are very much in this conversation for the baseball postseason. And like I said, they just trashed the Tigers here in the last 3 days. And now the schedule they won 6-0 last night. They swept the doubleheader yesterday, I should say. They're off to Toronto. And then after that, they go to Atlanta. So we'll see what it's all about. But I think the Angels are somebody you better watch if you keep up with baseball.
Yeah, and if I'm Jay Ohtani and I'm the Angels, I said, you know what we'll do? There's a writer's strike right now. There's a strike in Hollywood. How would you like your own sitcom? We can get that taken. What else? I said 10 years, 500. I don't think 10 years, 500 is going to cut it, bud. I think we're probably looking at 12, 600 in the offseason. I'm up in the number, man.
These are numbers that are so outworldly that it just blows my mind. But we can thank television for all this. That's JC, okay. Man. That's all right.
Hey, gotta love it. JC, Seth Harp, Titan MRI Hotline with you all here right. On this Friday edition of PodUp with Matthews. I know we have Zac Blobner, WDAE Tampa, waiting in the wings, man. It's been a fun week. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this with me. I always enjoy hanging out with you guys.
Yes, Seth, we appreciate your service, and we'll see you again soon. And guys, have a great weekend. See you Monday.
There we go. JC with us here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning as his phone line starts to dance a little bit on us. And there we go. Zac Blobner, former Florida Gator, host of J&Z WDAE in Tampa. Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield. He's been at camp. Zach's seen these two. What are we hearing? What are we seeing? And what are the Rays going to do with the trading deadline? Just a couple questions we have for Zach next on this Friday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi there, this is head ball coach Steve Spurrier, and I'm here with my wife Jerry and our good friend Sherry Houston, the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of North Central Florida. We're thrilled to announce that the 2-year anniversary of our restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, is coming up on August 14th. Last year, we had so much fun celebrating with everybody that we're doing it bigger and better this year. We're hosting a special dinner and celebration that will include a chef's choice of premium buffet or your favorite Spurrier Gridiron Grill menu, including a filet mignon carving station, shrimp and grits, short rib risotto, wonderful seafood options, and many dessert options also.
Like my famous chocolate chip cookies.
Proceeds being donated to the local Ronald McDonald House.
Thrilled to once again partner with Coach Jerry and the Spurrier Gridiron team to raise funds for the Ronald McDonald House, benefiting families and children experiencing medical emergencies.
Spurrier's Gridiron Grill will be donating 11% of all of our money from food and 66% of drink sales to the Ronald McDonald House.
Go to spurriers.com right now and reserve a ticket before they sell out.
We'll have wonderful food, special guests, and a limited edition of the 2nd year anniversary collector's coins, as well as prizes like a dinner with me and Jerry. We couldn't have become one of the busiest and most successful restaurants in the Southeast without your support. So we want to celebrate with the most important people of our team, and that's you.
I want to celebrate with some of those cookies. Do you have any of those?
Sure do. Right here for you.
Oh, thank you.
Seth Harp on Sports with you here on this Friday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Joining us, courtesy of the Titan MRI Hotline, former Florida Gator, host of the J and Z show in Tampa on WDAE, former Gator Zac Blobner with us here. Zach, get right into it because that's what we do, right? Don't waste time. The Rays, oh boy. What looked like to be Arnold Schwarzenegger at the beginning of Terminator now looks at that scene near the end of it when his arm's gone. Like in every movie, his face is half melted off. He's still functioning and moving, but the beast that was a machine that looked unstoppable now looks completely vulnerable. I think you brought up the stat, or you and Jay were talking about it, where since benching Wander Franco and getting into his grill, there's something like 13 games below 500. What on earth has taken this massive freight train off the rails in Tampa?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Trust me, we're trying to figure it out ourselves. And, you want to pinpoint one thing or one player. And we really do look back to that Wander Franco benching and see the slide. I mean, technically the slump started before that. But we wonder in hindsight, which we have the ability now to look back on, if that was the right move, because the team just hasn't been the same since. You can point to Randy Arozarena in the home run derby. How much has that affected him? Like, I'm not in the camp that thinks that really hurts hitters, but there are numbers, obviously, that suggest that it may the second half of the season when those batters return to their regular team and in the regular season. So you can look at those two things. Obviously, they had pitching injuries earlier in the year, but they were still successful after starters Springs and Rasmussen went down. But I just don't know. I mean, it's not one thing. And that's we've been going through the ladder and the progression of like, is it this? Is it that? And it's probably a collective of all those things. The big question that we have is, are they going to come back up to the average of what we expect them to be? Because I don't think anybody expected them to stay as hot or historically good hitting as they were the first third of the season. But I don't think anybody, that's being completely honest, also expected them to fall as hard as they have the second third of the season. And you referenced the Terminator. We're all wondering if they'll be back. He says he will be in the movie. We'll see if they are. In the last third of the season, to be fair, does usually tell, the difference between which teams are going to be ready for postseason play and not. So if, people are looking at the Rays and counting them out, it's fair. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel right now on this team. But what I would say is, they still have time because of the long ass season to maybe get things figured out here this final third. But all indications are right now that they're not going to figure it out. So until we see something otherwise in the field of play for more than a game here and there, looking for some consistency in a series or probably two. The Astros come to town today for 3, or they're in Houston, excuse me. Then they're in New York for 3, and the trade deadline's August 1st too. So all of that kind of mixed together, I think we'll really know which direction this team's going to be heading in terms of the postseason and hopefully beyond in the next couple of weeks.
This team, at least over the last few years, they've made impactful moves at the trading deadline. I like the Nelson Cruz trade a couple years ago. It added some power. He hit, 10 home runs in the last 2 months, or 9 home runs. And the thing is, they just ran into a Red Sox team that was red hot and everything was going right for them. And then, of course, last year, it's a team that was limping down the stretch, and the Indians caught them with 2 right hooks. And the Rays scored 1 run in 2 games. You're not winning the postseason when that happens. So the last 2 years, it's kind of been like this, like slide rule.
Yeah.
Out. There was talk of Ohtani. I don't know how much realistic avenues there were with that, at least exploring that trade. Hearing anything? I know that Robertson from the Mets was mentioned. Dave Robertson is a reliever, and then bam, I look up and he's on his way to the Marlins. They go out and get him. So the Marlins, who are completely falling apart too, go out and trade for a guy that's Zach 2-0 with a 2 ERA. So they go get bullpen help. What are we hearing? Any names, any prospects, anything out there that rumor-wise you're hearing for the Rays?
Yeah, so the Rays do have still a very deep farm system, certainly have pieces to move. So on their end, they got a ton of flexibility for being able to go out and get some guys. They've always had really good relationships with the Pittsburgh Pirates. We know that they have Keller and Bednar, both are available. So those are a couple guys that they're being linked to recently. The Tigers are a team that they're looking at too. Erod, one of the closers there, one of the bullpen arms. And then they've been recently tied to Lance Lynn and the White Sox, looking at maybe adding the 4th, 5th guy in the rotation, getting a starter of his caliber who's not having a good year. But, you're looking at the 4th or 5th guy, and the Rays always feel like they can make a pitcher be his best self, and they have a good track record of doing that. So there are a lot of arms they're being tied to. One of the guys that I was kind of hoping that they would go after is Marcus Stroman. I just think he's a guy as a spark plug that could come here from the Cubbies and be that 4th or 5th starter in the rotation and kind of help this team get some of its juice back. And that's the biggest thing, is they're looking at all these arms. But at the end of the day, if you think about the playoffs, which is really, like you mentioned, the goal, it's not just to make it, it's to make another deep run, especially after the last 2 years. They have Sugar Shane McClanahan, who probably would have started in this year's All-Star game had he not been banged up a little bit. Started in last year's. Zach Eflin, who's having a great season, had a bad start in his last outing, and he had a little bit of an injury scare there against the Marlins. But overall, they're expecting him to be okay. And then Tyler Glasnow, who at his best is a Cy Young type of hurler. Those are your 3 guys that you're going to be riding with. So they feel really good about that. They get Andrew Kittredge back, who's one of their former all-star bullpen arms. So he looks every bit as good as he was before his injury and recovery. And then they'll add some arms at the deadline. So the pitching is the least of my worries. And it typically is with the Rays. Let's just say in this hypothetical world, they want to go out and add a bat or a veteran player. The bottom line is you still need Randy Arozarena and Wander Franco to be good players, be the guys they are. So as much as I want to see the Rays be active, and I think they will, I'd be shocked if they didn't add multiple players, multiple arms here before that August 1st deadline. The bottom line is the players that started off historically hot at the plate have to find some kind of way back to that hitting. And it won't matter what they do at the deadline. Again, if especially those 2 guys aren't doing their thing. And then you look around them. Josh Lowe's a guy who had a rough start last year as a rookie, got sent back down, but had a really good start this year. And he needs to get back to that. Brandon Lau is another guy. Brandon Lau is the hottest topic in Tampa Bay. He's the biggest guy we point to because he's such a slugger 3 years ago. He hits all these home runs, and then he just has disappeared because of injury and just not being able to be that guy at the plate. Now, he's hit a little bit better the last 4 or 5 games. I'm really looking to see if he can sustain that kind of success on the road, again, in Houston and then New York. If he can get hot, he's the type of guy that can carry this team with his bat alone. Now, we've been waiting for a long time, and I'm not putting a lot of stock in it. But if he can get hot, he can carry this team for 2 or 3 weeks until, again, hopefully those guys start to find their way again. The one guy I'm not worried about, Yandy Diaz, first baseman, all-star. He's the model of consistency, barring any type of injury. He's at least one guy you can point to in the leadoff spot that you can rely on.
Yeah, and Paredes too. I think it's interesting because after the first game of the Marlins series, I went back and crunched the numbers. In their last 15 games, so combined 30, Randy Arozarena and Wander Franco had 2 home runs, 8 RBI, and were hitting combined 168. You can do whatever you want. If your 2 studs are hitting 168, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose. And if you hit a slump, you hit it the right time. But the American League East, and that's another thing, Zach, that you didn't count on the Red Sox figuring it out. I ever thought this should be the worst team in that division? I thought they'd be the worst team in that division. And then the Yankees with Aaron Judge, I mean, they're struggling right now, but if he can come back at all, then what they can do down the stretch. And the teams like the Cubs, you mentioned the Cubs all of a sudden are back to 500. So are they going to sell or are they going to go for it? Are they going to buy? So all these teams that were struggling get hot right at the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see all that.
But you mentioned Ohtani too. The Angels are buying now. We thought they were going to be shipping away, but that's the beauty of them. The deadline's different this year. Remember, there used to be like the 2 deadlines. Yeah. So they combined them and they made it August 1st so that there was this drama of teams not being sure if they should buy or sell.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But it just, there's small little arms and small little things just to shake up chemistry. And there's not like that. It's just interesting. There's no like, I remember when Mark McGwire got traded near the deadline and Randy Johnson would get, there's nobody out there like that. Ohtani could have been that guy.
Yeah.
Nobody out there. I mean, if the Mets would shop Scherzer or Verlander, well, wow. But it looks like they're not going to do that. Although trading Robertson, you don't know.
I would keep an eye too, and this isn't really Rays related, but just in terms of the hot stove, and ironically bring up Mark McGwire. The Cardinals are a team that might ship out Nolan Arenado, who's a stud, and then they got Paul Goldschmidt too if they really want to be sellers. A couple arms there, a couple good starters in Flaherty and Montgomery, and then the Padres, an interesting team who I thought they were like a World Series S type of squad hanging into the season. Apparently now they might be open to shipping a guy like Juan Soto, maybe Blake Snell. Seeing some of the names that they're kicking out there. I think Hader was the other one. So those are the 2 teams with at least superstar potential on the Cards and the Padres that might be shipping out. But again, I don't hear any of the guys on either of those squads linked to Tampa Bay.
PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Seth Harp, Harp on Sports, Zac Blobner, J&Z, WDAE in Tampa with us here on this Friday edition, brought to you in part by QC Kinetics. If you have joint pain in your shoulders, knee, hip, or back, just won't go away, check out QC Kinetics long-lasting relief. No surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics with locations in Ocala, now open in Gainesville as well. All right, want to pivot in here to the Bucks. You guys are the home of the Bucks. Your cluster is the Bucks last year, talking about running it back, Tom Brady, all the pieces in place. And now Tom exits stage right. And Kyle Trask, who sat back and waited in the wings like Tony Romo did with the Cowboys for a couple years. You can go through and look at guys that just hang around and finally got their chance. He wasn't even the backup. I always try to remind people, Blaine Gabbert's been the backup. So now practice squad, 3rd string, Baker Mayfield gets a 1 year, $8-9 million, right in that range. Players talking in the locker room, split snaps, shared snaps, first team, second team. Do the first, I know we've only got a small snippet. What are the observations been at Bucks camp? Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, so they put the pads on Sunday, and as you know, I spent many training camps with you watching the Jags in Jacksonville. That's really where you start to get some semblance of what this team or those teams might look like. That being said, both Baker and Kyle are moving around in and out of the pocket a lot during not only like the scrimmaging portions, but just in their drills. A lot of bootlegs for Baker. They got Kyle kind of being light on his feet too. Obviously, with Tom Brady at the helm, they didn't do any of that last year. So the new OC, Dave Canales, down from the Seattle Seahawks. He definitely wants to keep both those guys fleet-footed and be able to not only move around in the pocket, but break it. And it looks like a lot of sideways movement. I don't see these guys, busting out for a 50-yard run. But Kyle, to his credit, he looks in great physical shape. Not that he was out of shape prior. He seems a lot lighter on his feet, even in what we had seen the last couple of years in some practices and stuff. So I give him a lot of credit. I try to remind people with Kyle too, because he was buried so deep on those last 2 teams, not even just in the quarterback room, just in general. It's kind of like in ways a rookie year for him. Like he's not used to talking to the media as much as he has. And we feel his confidence growing and like the way he's carrying himself. he's being more of like that feel of a starter every time we talk to him. So I give him a lot of credit for that. I think he's taken a lot of great steps in the right direction. That being said, I find it really hard to believe that there's going to be enough that he can do with preseason and camp to overtake Baker Mayfield's experience that he already has in the league. So in terms of week one, Kyle's got an uphill battle, even though it is a true 50-50 split with starter reps this way around. I mean, we've seen it out there. Like there's yesterday, it was Kyle with the majority of starters until they were in the red zone. Then it was Baker. The first day, it was kind of the other way around. I'm sure they'll keep flip-flopping like that. And it'll be interesting to see how they handle that first preseason game. And if they flip-flop it in the second, or if they just ride with the guy they feel like is the go-to quarterback at that position. So I think when you look at these two guys, it's really Baker's job to lose. And what I mean by that is he would have to throw a ridiculous amount of interceptions, both in practice and in preseason. And Kyle would have to be like extremely clean. It would have to be a pretty noticeable, sizable gap between them for Kyle to win it. And I just don't see that scenario playing out. But that being said, I'm also not betting on Baker to necessarily stay healthy or stay, productive enough through the course of an entire season to not give way for a guy like Kyle Trask to maybe step in and get his shot too. I truly believe by the end of the year, I don't know how many, but that Kyle Trask will start a game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And to that point, Seth, that means splitting reps right now is huge for him because it's really the only experience he's had in any starter capacity, even though it's his, few years into the league now. It's not his first season. But even with that, like that's why it's so invaluable. And I think that's why the Bucs are doing it. I think Coach Todd Bowles wants to go with Baker. And I think him and Dave Canales, the OC, and in the front office too, are just like, listen, that's fine. But if it goes south with Baker and Trask doesn't have anything under his belt from camp, it's going to continue to be bad. We have to at least try to build something up with Kyle so that when he does step in, if he has to step in, there's some kind of, background he can fall back on with these receivers, with this system and all those things that go along with it.
Zac Blobner, WDAE in Tampa, J&Z show, Seth Harp on Sports, with you here on this Friday edition of PodUp with Matthews. Joining you via the Titan MRI hotline. You got a question for us? Fire away, courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official legal law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Fire away, and we'll throw it Zach's way with regards to Kyle Trask. Speaking of all this, you see stories, whether it's Pro Football Talk, they'll pop up that little number 12 still has contact with people in the front office. All right. It's a broken record, but broken records, they got scratches. The scratches don't go away, Zach. What on earth? Scenarios, possibilities. I mean, if Baker gets hurt, is it come on back? What are we seeing here? What are we hearing?
Yeah, the thing is I was staunch that he wasn't coming back last year, right? And he did. So now that that's happened, there's precedent. So everybody is going to constantly talk about it nonstop. I still, again, feel very strongly he's not going to come back in any capacity for any team, let alone the Buccaneers. A couple of things that I would point to. Even if Tom Brady came back as a free agent, they would have to, sign him to a deal in Tampa Bay. Like, let's just start there. It wouldn't take away from the dead cap they're eating from his contract already. So they're eating like $30 million of his dead cap, and then they would give him a new deal, and they're cap strapped already. Even the veterans minimum, which would be wild to see a guy like Brady take, I think still would like have them handcuffed money-wise. So the numbers just don't work. So that's on the financial side if you want to play the like, well, what if he decides it? Then there's the other element of like, him trying to be involved with the Raiders front office and have some ownership stake in that. Like he wouldn't be able to do that and play for the Bucs. And if you're the Raiders and Mark Davis, why would you like green like that and then allow him to have a piece of your franchise after the fact? So I think if you're really going to go down that pipe dream scenario, it'd be more like what happens if Jimmy G gets hurt in Vegas? Is there a scenario where he can step in? But that being said, I will, for whatever purposes of the people that want to believe he might come back even like 0.0001%. Look, the Bucs front office is always going to have the light open or the door open and the light on for Tom Brady. Like they've said that. Jason Light, the GM, has said that every year. Now it's a dimmer light, as Jason Light mentioned heading into this season, than it has been in the past. But yeah, he's Tom freaking Brady. Like at the end of the day, he can make his own calls. But I'll say this on the other side of it. There's a lot of Bucs fans that really feel like this team needs to move on and wouldn't actually be super open to him coming back, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Zach, one of the things I want to ask you, as we pivot here, I know you're a former Gator. They start the year in Utah. It was 5 weeks from last night. So we're less than 5 weeks away. I don't here at this point. People give Seth, what do you think our record's going to be? I'm like, I've not seen Graham Mertz throw a ball. I don't know. I don't know.
You're not doing the Francesa? That's a loss. That's a
loss, win, loss, win, loss. It's funny how that works. Loss, win.
Loss.
You're predicting games that you don't know if it's going to snow or not. So I ask you this. This is, looking at the conference as a whole, do you see anybody? This is not just Florida. Do you see anybody in this landscape? Or how about this? Let's take a step back. The SEC, the domination of this conference, Georgia back-to-back years. Of course, you look back a couple of years ago and the college football playoff and what Alabama has done. You look at what LSU has done. This conference has run roughshod over this thing. Clemson did have a little bit of a flare in there at the beginning of the playoff a decade ago. Ohio State flexed a bit. If you had to pick one team that you're lining everything up with that has a chance to dethrone Alabama, Georgia, whoever comes out of the conference, who are you picking?
So not picking Alabama or Georgia. I think LSU, right, like Brian Kelly is a guy who we all made fun of when he took the job because of the way he was trying to work in the Southern twang. But he's the real deal. Like he's one of the best coaches in the country. He's got nothing but runway in Baton Rouge. He's definitely a guy, and that's definitely a program where I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked if they were better than Bama. And then if they're going head-to-head with Georgia, right, East-West, like who knows? I'm not putting a lot of stock. I know a lot of people were starting to get kind of higher on the Vols after last season. I'm not ready to put all my chips on Milton as quarterback there. I don't know what – not that they're going to be bad, but I'm not ready to put them on the level of the Georgias and Alabamas. Texas A&M, obviously, right, like great recruiting classes every year. At some point, they have to pop, right? Jimbo's got to figure it out. Got an OC there to help him out now. I don't know if that's this year, but I still see them as like second tier on the peripherals. I put the Gators in that category of a lot of work to do. They got as much work to do in this conference as anybody else. I thought it was interesting from media days. There were some people kind of at Vandy looking to make some noise this season. So I'm not putting stock in that either. But and honestly, LSU is such a cop-out pick because it's not like they ever weren't really around. What was it, like a couple seasons? And they won a title in there with Joe Burrow. But yeah, that's a program that if they won the SEC, like I wouldn't blink. I'd be like, yeah, they're good enough, and that coach is good enough to make that happen. So those are really the three teams, and then anybody outside of them, it would be a pretty big shock, I think.
Yeah, and I look across the board, and of course, your Michigans, your Ohio States, your Southern Cals, the ACC. I don't know who could take down Clemson. I don't know if anybody's quite there yet.
I think the Noles are as good as Clemson this year. Now, I don't think FSU necessarily is going to lock in as the ACC champs, and it burns my body up to say that in any capacity because obviously I'm not trying to pound the podium for Florida State, but they brought back a lot of talent. They killed the transfer portal. Mike Norvell took another huge step last year that I didn't think he could take. Now, I think he's also the biggest question mark for me still. Like, I don't necessarily believe in Norvell in terms of being like an upper echelon coach yet. And last year, what held him back was not being able to beat the good teams, right? In that conference, at least in the ACC, the winning squads. But I think that they have the talent, and Jordan Travis at least has a lot of experience in that system. I would not be surprised if FSU won the ACC this year and then, stake their claim in the playoff over a Clemson. And then Harbaugh, obviously, what happens with the suspension or if there is one because of the recruiting stuff, and how much does that hold Michigan back, right? Like, given there's still great players there and all that, and Harbaugh isn't the only thing that makes that all work. But I think that would be interesting. So but until we know more about that, I would kind of take them off the platter for a playoff conversation. Ohio State's always going to be in it. You mentioned USC, obviously, with Lincoln Riley there. They return a lot of talent. So definitely some squads there to look at. But yeah, I think if we're talking ACC, FSU and Clemson should be mentioned in that breath.
Yeah, and if it goes south there in Tampa for the Bucks this year, USC has a quarterback that you may be interested in when it's all said and done. Just
a couple ACC guys, or another ACC guy, I should say, on the other flip side of it, UNC. I like May a lot too. Caleb Williams is obviously he's going number one. Like you can lock him in. So It's so weird to look at Caleb Williams because everybody assumes Arizona. I think even Arizona assumes that the Cardinals are like going to be the worst team in the league. What do they do with Kyler Murray? Do they take Caleb Williams? Do they trade that away? We haven't even started the season yet. But after all that's said and done, it's like, well, May's still around. So I think he's going to be a really good prospect too in the NFL.
I just get a kick out of it because you look at Kyler Murray, Zach, he's got like a $50 million. I mean, he's got something like $70 million guaranteed. So it's like, well,
I don't know, man.
Williams didn't want to have a $40 million watching him for 2 years.
And who's taking that contract? No. Who wants Kyler Murray at that contract? Nobody.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. Zac Blobner, WDAE in Tampa, courtesy of the Titan MRI hotline. Quick reminder, PodUp with Matthews in the morning, brought to you in part by Celebration Point, where Gators go to celebrate. Premium brands, Visor's Rooftop, Bass Pro Shops, Dave & Buster's, Fat Tuesday, Starbucks, and the HBC's restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, the hottest restaurant in Florida in the heart of Gator Nation. That's Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. All right, man. As always, it's a pleasure. Thanks for giving us some time here. Again, somebody wants to check out the J&Z show, WDAE in Tampa. I know you've been spot filling in doing I heard you doing the post-game show, pre-game show, all that stuff.
It was, yeah.
For the Rays. What's on your docket here, Zac Blobner, former Florida Gator on the air at WDAE in Tampa? What do you got coming up?
Yeah, so with football season coming back, obviously I'll be at a lot of the training camps. So at Zac on the mic across all social. Twitter is probably the easiest way to get that information, though, as I pump out different videos and stuff. But again, at Zac on the mic. And then we have our Fantasy Fix show coming back. I do that with Brandon Kravitz, who is a radio host in Orlando at 96.9 The Game, also under the iHeart umbrella. That is also on in Miami. So we got Miami, Orlando, and Tampa for the Fantasy Fix. That'll be every Sunday in regular season of the NFL season from 10 to 11 on WDAE as well. On the iHeart Radio app is the easiest way to find us. And then J&Z every weekday from noon to 3 on WDAE here in Tampa. And then, I got some stuff with the Rays here and there I'll be doing. I got some watch parties coming up. But again, easiest way to get that and see where I'll be is at Zac on the mic across social.
There you go. Zac Blobner, WDAE in Tampa, at Zac on the mic, the J&Z show. Check them out every single day from noon to 3. As always, man, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Likewise. Appreciate you. Go Gators.
There we go. That wraps up the week. A PodUp with Matthews in the morning. A bunch of people we need to thank. Philip, we need to thank Zach Rothrock, everybody that was part of the show all week long. And Shano will be back on Monday. So there you go. So thanks for Zac Blobner. I'm Seth Harp. This has been PodUp with Matthews in the morning.